So doing a mic check.
Loud and clear.
Yep, we could hear you.
Good. So doing a mic check.
Loud and clear.
Yep, we could hear you.
Good.
Maybe somebody has the YouTube on.
So doing a mic check.
Oh, I think that's me. One moment.
Yeah, vote counting would have been fun if we kept looping like that.
I heard it 4 times before turning it off. It was kind of creepy.
Tell Kevin he doesn't need to practice his speech if we're going to do that.
Oh, yeah. Showing 12:59, so we'll start here shortly, but let me know if you're not ready. Okay, I'm showing 1 o'clock. So good afternoon, everybody. This is a special open meeting of the New Mexico Public Regulation Commission. It's 1 o'clock on Thursday, September 25th, 2025. So we'll go ahead and get started with a roll call. Mr. Cameron?
Commissioner Aguilera,
Here.
Commissioner O'Connell,
Here.
Commissioner Nybert.
Here,
We have all commissioners in attendance virtually, and you have a quorum, Mr. Chair.
Okay. So we'll, I guess, stand in front of our cameras to say the pledge and state pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I salute the flag of the state of New Mexico, the Zia symbol of perfect friendship among united cultures. All right. I feel like you guys got away with one there. I think I only heard myself. Um, so next on the agenda is to consider and approve the agenda that we have before us. It's a short one. We only have one item, docket number 2527 UT. Commissioners, any changes? Looks like not. Okay, so we'll do maybe just a voice vote for this one. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nobody opposed. So we'll continue on with our agenda as it was posted. In terms of announcements, I don't have any announcements. Commissioners, do you have any announcements that you'd like to share? No?
No, sir.
Okay. In the absence of any announcements, we'll move on to public comment. Jordan, do we have any public comment?
Good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon, Commissioners. There is no public comment requests at this time. Thank you.
Okay. And I'm not seeing any hands raised either, so we'll get down to business. The one regular action item we have, as I said, is docket number 2527 UT, and this is a filing submitted by Southwestern Public Service Company. To present it, we have Mr. Kevin Gedko. So I'll turn it over to you for the presentation. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Yeah, the case before you, 25-00027-UT, titled In the Matter of Southwestern Public Service Company's Annual 2026 Renewable Energy Portfolio Procurement Plan and requested approvals therein, proposed 2026 Renewable Portfolio Standard Cost Rider, and other associated relief. The docket is SPS's 2026 Renewable Energy Act Plan application. It was filed on April 1st, 2025, and it seeks approval of SPS's 2026 REA plan. It provides SPS's 2027 REA plan for informational purposes only, and also provides SPS's 2024 plan year report. The majority of SPS's requests are uncontested, including the inclusion of resources that were previously approved for cost recovery through SPS's RPS cost rider, also SPS's 2026 Solar Connect rate rider, and SPS's 2026 Large Customer Renewable Connect rate rider. The draft order approves those uncontested items. The main contested issue in the proceeding is whether SPS should be granted approval to recover the 2026 costs of its self-build Cunningham Unit 1 and Plant X Units 1 and 2 solar generation facilities through its 2026 RPS cost rider. Cunningham 1 is a 72 megawatt solar project, and Plant X is a 150 megawatt solar project that are predicted to be in service in April 2026. These can be referred to as the 2026 solar projects. Previously, in docket 23-00252-UT, these projects, along with Cunningham Unit 2, were granted a certificate of public convenience and necessity. Cunningham Unit 2 is discussed in this docket, but it is scheduled to be in service in 2027 and is therefore not included in the 2026 costs that are being considered today. As you know, since the inception of SPS's cost rider, RPS cost rider, it has included only the incremental costs of the renewable resources included in the renewable resources that are included in that rider, a portion of which are the uneconomic costs of those resources. The 2026 solar projects were selected through an all-source RFP as an economic resource to meet SPS's capacity needs, and SPS has sought approval to recover the full 2026 costs of the 2026 solar projects through its RPS rider. The parties have contested whether, given these facts, SPS should be permitted to recover the costs of these resources, the 2026 solar projects, through the RPS cost rider, or whether they should be considered in a general rate case and collected through base rates. Further, the contested issue has highlighted questions regarding whether and how RPS riders should be used in an environment wherein renewables currently comprise a minimum 40% of a New Mexico public utilities resource mix, with an increase to 50% in 2030 and 80% in 2040. This is an issue that was debated in docket number 20-00158-UT, which is the most recent rulemaking for Rule 572. The co-hearing examiners in this case, with respect to this broader issue, have recommended that the Commission form a working group to consider the matter. So before you, there is a draft order that contains two sets of options for two items. One item is whether SPS should be allowed to recover the costs of the 2026 solar projects through its RPS rider. This is a question about the appropriate rate-making process to use for the 2026 solar projects. Option 1 denies recovery of those costs through the 2026 RPS rider and orders that SPS seek recovery of those costs in the general rate case that it intends to file this fall. The second option also currently denies recovery of these costs through the RPS rider, but orders the consideration of these costs in the imminent general rate case while leaving the door open to a decision being made in the rate case that these costs can be collected through the RPS rider. The second item, for which there are two options, addresses the manner in which to address the broad questions of whether and how RPS riders should be utilized moving forward. Option 1 finds that the issue should be addressed in a discrete rulemaking in accordance with Decretal Paragraph C of the Commission's Order on Rehearing in docket number 20-00158. Option 2 finds that the parties to this case and any other interested parties are encouraged to meet on their own initiative and decide whether to request informal workshops or a rulemaking to develop future guidance that could apply to future RPS cases for all regulated electric utilities. The draft order also addresses the exceptions that were filed by SPS and the Coalition for Clean Affordable Energy, and finds that they do not persuade the Commission to currently grant recovery of the 2026 solar projects through SPS's RPS rider, and do not persuade the Commission that it should make a determination here and now in this docket regarding the appropriate utilization of RPS riders moving forward. With that relatively lengthy intro, I stand for questions.
Thank you for that presentation. Commissioners, do either of you want to get us started?
I'm happy to start just because I think option 2 was my idea. Also willing to listen to whoever authored option 1.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay, so option 2, the idea is instead of saying that these costs are B and base rates at the rate case, we'll determine how they'll be recovered in a future rate case. So one thing I just want to point out for anybody that we're not talking about ending the use of the riders. We're really just talking about this case and this application. I was a fan of option 2 for a bunch of reasons. First one is, as Mr. Gedko noted, we know that SPS is filing a rate case. So a good use of a rider is to address lag. You know, if you're just adding a RPS resource and then you're not going to file a rate case for a long time, rider might be a good way to address that as we go along. The next issue is, and it's really, to me, the big issue that binds up a lot of what we're talking about here. If we're going to 40%, 80% RPS, these resources aren't just RPS resources anymore. They are your source of supply. So we got to figure that out in a place where we can look at the whole, holistically rate-making principles while we're building towards that. And again, because SPS is going to file a rate case very soon, this gives us opportunity to start making that transition in the forum where we arguably will be equipped to do the best job of not just setting revenue requirement, but allocating costs, designing rates, all that. And then the final thing, it also kind of leads to why I was saying, hey, let's not prescribe the rulemaking process in this case, but instead encourage people to get together and petition us for the rulemaking. Is, again, as Mr. Gedko pointed out, the RPS is 40% of your supply. For PNM, that's 40% of 100%. For SPS, that's 40% of 50%. For El Paso, it's 40% of something less than a third. Because all these utilities use all their resources to serve load. So cost allocation, rate design, all those kind of things might be very different for each individual utility. So rather than take one of these utilities and explode that to here's the universal truth for all utilities, let's pursue a rulemaking out of a case that was defined for one of them. I'd rather the group get together and say, here are the issues and how to look at them universally. Because if we're going to do rulemaking, I don't want the rule just to apply to one of our three utilities. I want a rule that works for everybody. So anyway, having said all that, that's why I'm a proponent of option 2. I can live with option 1, but just wanted to explain myself. And then something, if we want to get into the weeds, and maybe we'll preserve this for later if we need to, but we're still got some red lines and some marginal notes when we get into this, like paragraph 23 on page 9. For me, that's like this big question of, does the writer communicate RPS compliance? I think we've got lots of examples in this order where we're showing that in this world where your bread and butter resource is also going to give you RPS compliance, writer's not a great communication tool. In fact, I'll take it, a step further. Mr. Gegko described how SPS's writer was designed initially. Very different design than how it got designed for the other utilities. There only things that went into the writer initially were things that were deemed to be uneconomic, right? So in addition to what we would have paid absent RPS, that's what went into the writer. Kind of ironic that now they're asking for whole Megillah on renewable resources, because it's like 180 degrees opposite from what they were arguing for when they established the writer in the first place. But again, if you want to take it a step further, in this case, if you've got resources that are giving them capacity and energy, and they are part of least cost portfolio, then maybe what goes into the writer is a credit, because the next resource would be more expensive. So I'm not saying that's the right answer. I'm not saying that's a position I would advocate for in a rate case, but I'm just saying, if you want to look at communication using a writer, you add all of 80% of your supply in the writer and say that's what RPS costs me? I don't think so. So writer is a poor communication tool. And again, we say that many times in this order. Rather than keep chasing the wording on paragraph 23, I'd say maybe we can just edit that down or delete it. So anyway, that's my thoughts. Yeah. Glad to see you, Commissioner Neighbor. One more thought.
It's certainly good to be seen. I don't know that you can hear me very well because I'm not speaking very well, but I'll do the best I can, Mr. Chair. 3 weeks ago, when I first started looking at this, it seemed to me that the commission should grant the request and signal that the use of riders for recovery of capital cost for renewables may be coming to an end. And that maybe they should be part of the rate base. Looking at maybe the purposes of riders historically, looking at the purposes of riders for this specific effort being meeting the renewable energy compliance standards, it just seemed to me that switching, not approving it would be switching our traditional course of action without much notice. And so I was concerned about that. Mr. Getco did inform me that SPS was kind of alone in how it treated its request in the past. And as Commissioner O'Connell pointed out, it only requested a rider for the costs that it deemed uneconomic for that resource acquisition in the past. Well, SPS now has decided to do what we've done with El Paso Electric and P&M since the beginning, and that is put everything in the rider. And traditionally, we have approved those requests. In fact, I think we're going to see another one here in the upcoming weeks. So while that may be a difference, it does seem to me that and maybe I'm a little more sensitive to that because I live in that territory, but it seems to me that we ought to be treating them the same when they request to be treated the same. So my preference would be to grant the rider, but to try to get off of the merry-go-round and begin having this stuff incorporated within a normal rate case and incorporate these assets just like they do any other generating asset, other expenditures into their rate case and setting the rate base. So that would be my preference. There's not an order out there that does that, but that would be my preference. Having heard Commissioner O'Connell's arguments, since we do know that SPS is teeing up a rate case in the very near future, it does seem to me that it's just a matter of timing. Do they get to recoup their investment immediately, or do they wait 6, 9, 10, maybe 24 months? I don't think it'll be 24 months, but maybe 12 to 15 months before they get to start recouping the investment in Cunningham and the one over at Hale. So anyway, to me, letting them put on this matter in that rate case makes sense, because for my 2 cents, I think that's where we need to go, because the riders ought to be an exception, not the rule. And in this one area, it's become the rule and not the exception. And so, I'd like to see progress toward that eventual end. The only thing I liked about the rider was that it did allow some communication of cost to be relayed to the consumer, but as pointed out, it's become the bulk, or is closely becoming the bulk of the generation. And frankly, since we never wiped the slate clean, the consumers are just seeing another line item. They're not seeing the impact of that one rate or that one rider on their bill necessarily, without having to dig pretty deep. So, the communication tool is probably over exaggerated at this point. So those would be my thoughts, and I'm certainly interested to hear the arguments for the other alternative, and we'll certainly be weighing my thoughts on those 2 alternatives. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So just in terms of how the rider has been used in the past, I do think the utilities have been using it differently, but I don't think PNM and EP have been putting everything in the rider. There are some resources that could have, are renewable and but those utilities did not request in all of the instances to put them in the rider. So I do think there are different approaches that the commission has approved in. And so I do think that, speaks to the ability to for SPS to request something different than they had in the past. And a lot has changed since SPS first proposed its first, I guess, request to include some of these costs in the rider. And so I do think it is a good time to discuss the use of the rider. And so I guess the other thing is my views have also evolved, especially since I was able to look at the two options together. And so I also have found myself shifting toward option 2. And I think the question about or the point about lag that Commissioner O'Connell made is a good one. I would also add that by the time the rates are in effect, we might have a different situation with the purpose of these resources, that the benefits that they're providing in terms of providing renewable energy credits. And so, or certificates, not credits, RECs. And so I think the second option of dealing with this in the rate case could potentially create different circumstances under which we are evaluating the request. The thing that I didn't like about the second option that I preferred about the first is that it answers the question already. We have a lot of testimony and we have arguments, and I like that the first option provided a response. But if we put ourselves in a different circumstance in the future, then it could be a different response. I don't know. And so that's why I also have been navigating towards the second option. On the second issue about the rulemaking, I think my comments are similar. What I like about the first option about starting a rulemaking is that I do think it's a good time to take a look at this. And if I had to guess, if, under option 2, if we leave it up to stakeholders, I think we end up with the same request to start a rulemaking. But I also see the benefit in providing that opportunity for stakeholders to discuss it first among themselves and maybe, have a more concrete proposal to start from when we look at it. So that being said, I have worked myself, to option 2 on both of those issues. And that's my explanation for doing so.
Thank you for that, Chair. You hit on exactly where I was living when I was trying to pick. I wholeheartedly agree option 1 provides a response. When I was proposing option 2, I was worried about being hypocritical, because I'd say one of my themes that I want to get across to commission and anybody else that's watching, that this commission, we shouldn't be kicking cans down the road. And so am I kicking a can down the road by pursuing option 2? But again, the key to that was SPS is on record in another case saying they're filing in November. So I understand they haven't filed until they do file, but I'm believing them on this one. So that was key to that. If I didn't know when they were going to file their next rate case, I would be on option one exactly for the reason you said, which is we need to answer questions when they come to us. And then the second one is just let's make sure that we're asking the best question, right? So I don't know, I'm a fan of the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, right? So the answer was 42 because we were asking the wrong question, right? So let's avoid that. And I just hope that this process sharpens up the question. If not, I agree with you. I bet we're back to where we were. If not in this moment, back to where the commission was back in 2022 or whatever it was when they said, hey, we've got this lingering question that we'll take on in due course. Well, due course hasn't happened yet. So if we get somebody to come and rattle the cage and say, here's the question to answer, then we might be ready to do it.
Mr. Chair, I would question whether we need a rulemaking at all. Errors exist. They've been obviously employed by this commission for a long time. Generally, and their purpose was to handle emergencies or very the need to act quickly, where a rate case takes some time. And the commission has navigated those waters for decades. Maybe with minimal rules or maybe with no rules. I don't know. It seems to me that what we need to message is that the days of just simply approving a rider for every renewable energy capital investment has come to an end. And the burden is upon the applicant to show us the exigent circumstances that exist as to why the rider mechanism should be employed and not the normal rate making process. And I would think that's true with respect to a number of issues. So I don't know that we even need to tackle that second issue, but I do think we do need to message in very clear terms, maybe even through a formal letter to the utilities, that we are no longer going to be just routinely considering riders as the proper mechanism to allow the recovery of those capital costs for those types of investments, and put them on notice that we would prefer them to go through the normal rate making process with respect to those types of investments. So
That's a
throw
good,
that out.
yeah, that's a good point. And I think that's another benefit of option two is for that issue is that it doesn't pigeonhole commission and industry and stakeholders into, one potential option. I think you're right. It could be, letter, maybe a statement of policy, or even precedent through an order. But I think option two gives us the ability to think about whether further action from the commission is needed, and if so, what should it be?
All right, so it sounds like we're landing on option two. I'll go ahead and move for approval
I'll
using
second.
option two.
I'll second, and then just check for some discussion.
Yeah, appreciate that. Because again, I just, it's more of a question. My question is more for Mr. Gitko is, do you feel like paragraph 23 is done with the drafting.
I do, in that the comments that are there were meant to help readers understand the drafting edits that were
Okay.
proposed and accepted. And yes.
Sorry, Chair, I didn't want to preempt any other discussion. It's just that one.
No, I think that's exactly what I meant to talk about, this paragraph. And yeah, and I'm just trying to look back to this specific paragraph, but was the suggestion here to delete the paragraph, or are there?
If we're good with it, I'm fine with it. It was just looked to me like there was still we were still trying to find the right words and the right phrases. And then when I thought about why does this exist, it's just to show an example of why RPS cost communication through the writer is imperfect. So I think we've hammered that pretty hard throughout this order. And frankly, with this discussion here too, I mean, broadly, I agree with Commissioner Nybert. Anytime we've got a rate case and there's riders out there, my first question is going to be, why don't we collapse the rider into base rates?
Right.
That's not to say I'm opposed to riders. I think there are valid and good uses for them, but if we're in an annual rate case filing situation, then what do you need riders for? So.
Yeah, I would be a big proponent of getting the eraser out and wiping the slate clean after a rate case.
Yeah, I think the last rate case, we approved the settlement, and that wasn't a feature of the settlement, but that's the kind of thing where you just don't know what the outcome of a rate case is gonna be when it gets filed. So you be flexible to let the best outcome come forward was the philosophy I was pursuing.
One question I have, Mr. Chair, is whether there's any provisions in alternative two that lock us into that rulemaking process. Because I would be concerned if there's some provision in there that would lock us into a rulemaking process.
No, my understanding was that we are declining the recommendation and the recommended decision to start a working group, but instead we're encouraging the parties to meet on their own initiative and decide whether to request informal workshops or a rulemaking to develop further guidance that could apply to future RPS cases.
Again, I would throw some cold water on rulemaking, because I think we have plenty of discretion at our disposal to address it. But anyway, I'm not suggesting we take that stuff out, but I would, since it's I guess at the will of the three utilities to engage in those discussions, they can discuss whatever they want and they can bring it back. We don't have to necessarily act on it.
Yeah, what I was trying to achieve was an invitation for them to have a conversation on their own. And maybe that doesn't need to be said either, because that's always true, right?
Okay, so it sounds like maybe there are no suggestions to that paragraph, but we could certainly entertain them if I didn't understand that correctly. Okay. Yeah, and I just want to thank the hearing examiners here and the stakeholders and for developing the record here. And I think the hearing examiners did a very thoughtful job in their RD. So just want to extend a thank you for that. Okay. Maybe we reach the point where there's no further discussion, but I'll check once more just to be sure. Okay. So, Mr. Cameron, I think we're ready for, oh, Kevin?
Only one thing, because of the way that the document is with the options both in it, and there's just tiny little non-substantive pieces, and I'm not talking about paragraph 23 to make it read correctly now that option 2 has been chosen. Could you designate one commissioner to just verify they like how I incorporate that final edit? Would you be, or just you trust me with it, but I would prefer to show you exactly how I clean the document up so that it only has the option 2s in it.
Sure. And Commissioner O'Connell, would you be okay doing that, or would
Yeah.
I can also,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, and we do have a statutory deadline for this one, and so I think we need to issue an order by tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I'll be working on it as soon as this meeting ends.
Yeah, I'll get on it this evening or tonight, so I have something by midnight.
Okay. Scott, do we need to amend the motion at all to accomplish that?
I don't think so. It sounds like all you're doing is just a little cleanup here and there. I don't think it substantively changes the order that's in front of you.
Okay. Great. With
You
that, then I
ready to
think
vote?
we're ready for a vote.
Okay. Commissioner Nybert,
Yes,
Commissioner O'Connell,
Yes,
Commissioner Aguilar.
Yes.
So the motion to adopt the order as presented in 250027 UT passes unanimously, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is adjournment. So unless there
Mr.
is,
Chair.
yeah, go ahead.
Before we adjourn, I just wanted to express my thanks to you and Commissioner O'Connell for my absence at the last meeting, having undergone some medical procedures, and your patience with me and my inability to focus the past week or so. And I hope to be getting stronger and getting back to normal here in the next week or so. But anyway, I appreciate your patience and appreciate this opportunity. I know we had this meeting because I was not able to attend the last meeting, so I appreciate your going out of your way to allow me to discuss this particular issue and to weigh in on these issues. Thank you.
Well, you look good, you look healthy, and that's important. The public interest is important, and your health is important as well. And I'm glad that we're able to achieve both. I think these cases really benefit from having more minds looking at them, and I knew that this case would benefit from your input, and so does the public interest. So
and I grew up in the 80s, so it's not how you feel, it's how you look, and you look marvelous, baby.
If I stood up, you might disagree, Commissioner O'Connell.
Yeah, that's the beauty of Zoom. You don't know what's going on down below.
Oh my.
All right. Well, thank you. Have a good weekend. If I don't talk to you,
You too. Thank you. Bye-bye.
we're adjourned.